The soft light of a new day often brings with it a quiet question that lingers in the back of the mind, a gentle wondering about why we are here and what this journey truly means. It is a conversation that does not require a temple or a formal altar, but rather an open heart and a willingness to look at the world with fresh eyes. When we think about the teachings left behind by the great sage, we often find that they are not heavy commands or rigid rules, but rather like a cooling rain on a dusty road. Life has a way of feeling like a constant rush, a series of tasks and worries that pile up until we forget to breathe, yet there is a profound beauty in the simple act of existing when we understand the rhythm of the universe. It is like watching a river flow, where the water is never the same from one moment to the next, yet the river itself remains a constant presence. This flow is the very essence of what was shared in those ancient groves and quiet forests so long ago. Imagine for a moment a small village tucked away in the foothills of the mountains, where the air is crisp and the people go about their daily lives with a sense of quiet purpose. In such a place, there was once a young man who felt a deep restlessness, a feeling that despite having a home and a family, something essential was missing. He spent his days searching for answers in books and in the words of others, but the more he looked, the more confused he became. One evening, he sat by a small stream and watched how the fallen leaves danced on the surface of the water. Some were caught in eddies, spinning in circles, while others moved swiftly downstream. He realized that his mind was much like those leaves, caught in the currents of desire and fear, never truly still. This realization is where the path begins for many of us, in that quiet moment of seeing the turbulence of our own thoughts without judgment. The teachings of Shakyamuni are often compared to a raft used to cross a wide and turbulent river. Once the other shore is reached, the traveler does not carry the raft on their back, for its purpose has been served. This tells us something very important about the nature of wisdom. It is a tool for liberation, not a burden to be hoarded. In our modern lives, we often collect ideas and philosophies as if they were physical possessions, hoping that the sheer volume of knowledge will bring us peace. But peace is not found in the accumulation of concepts. It is found in the letting go of the need to grasp. It is in the spaces between our thoughts, in the silence that follows a deep breath. When we look at the life of the Buddha, we see a person who walked the earth with a sense of complete ease, not because the world stopped being difficult, but because his internal world was no longer at war with reality. There is a story about a merchant who was once traveling through a dense forest with a caravan full of precious silks and spices. He was a man of great wealth, but he was also a man of great anxiety, constantly looking over his shoulder for thieves or worrying about the weather. One afternoon, he encountered a monk sitting quietly under a banyan tree. The monk had nothing but a simple robe and a bowl, yet his face radiated a tranquility that the merchant had never known. The merchant stopped and asked how it was possible to be so calm with so little. The monk looked at him with eyes full of kindness and asked if the merchant enjoyed the scent of the forest air or the sound of the birds. The merchant admitted he was too busy guarding his goods to notice. The monk smiled and said that the greatest treasure is the ability to be present in the moment, for that is the only place where life actually happens. Everything else is just a memory of what has passed or a dream of what might be. This simple exchange holds a profound truth about our human condition. We spend so much of our energy protecting what we have or mourning what we lost that we miss the vibrant reality of the present. The teaching suggests that our suffering often stems from this disconnect. We want things to be permanent in a world that is defined by change. We want to hold on to the spring, but autumn must come for the cycle of life to continue. Embracing this change is not a cause for sadness, but rather a reason for deep appreciation. Because a flower will eventually fade, its bloom is all the more precious. Because a moment will pass, we can cherish it fully while it is here. This perspective transforms our relationship with the world from one of ownership to one of wonder. Consider the nature of a candle flame. It appears to be a single, steady light, but in reality, it is a continuous process of transformation. The wax is consumed, the wick burns, and the heat creates a glow that illuminates the darkness. Our lives are very much like that flame. We are a collection of experiences, thoughts, and physical changes that are constantly in motion. There is no fixed point that we can point to and say this is exactly who I am forever. We are a beautiful, unfolding process. When we understand this, the pressure to maintain a perfect, unchanging image of ourselves begins to dissolve. We can allow ourselves to grow, to learn from our mistakes, and to evolve with the passing years. This fluidity is not a sign of weakness, but a source of incredible strength and resilience. In the ancient texts, there is a mention of a gardener who took great pride in his orchard. He spent every waking hour pruning the trees and watering the soil, but he was always frustrated because some trees grew faster than others, and some fruits were sweeter than others. He wanted everything to be uniform and perfect. One day, a wandering sage passed by and watched the gardener working with such intensity. The sage asked the gardener why he looked so tired. The gardener complained about the stubbornness of the trees. The sage pointed to a wild tree growing at the edge of the forest, gnarled and twisted, yet full of vibrant leaves. He told the gardener that the tree does not try to be anything other than what it is. It follows its own nature. The gardener realized that his frustration came from his desire to control something that had its own rhythm. Life invites us to be like that gnarled tree, to accept our unique path and the natural timing of our own growth. We often compare our journey to those of others, feeling behind or superior, but these are just stories we tell ourselves. In the eyes of the Dharma, every being is on a unique path of awakening. There is no competition in the realm of the spirit. There is only the sincere effort to be more aware and more compassionate. This compassion begins with ourselves. If we cannot be kind to the person we see in the mirror, it is very difficult to extend genuine kindness to the rest of the world. We often carry a heavy bag of self-criticism, replaying our failures and highlighting our flaws. But the Buddha taught that we are all possessors of a bright, clear nature that is simply obscured by clouds of confusion. The clouds are not the sky. They pass through, sometimes dark and heavy, sometimes light and wispy, but the sky remains vast and untouched. Our true essence is like that sky. No matter what we have been through, no matter what mistakes we have made, that fundamental clarity is still there, waiting to be rediscovered. It is not something we have to create, but something we have to remember. This remembering happens through the practice of mindfulness, which is nothing more than paying gentle attention to our lives. When we eat, we know we are eating. When we walk, we know we are walking. When we feel a flicker of anger or a wave of joy, we acknowledge it without letting it pull us away from our center. This steady presence is the foundation of a peaceful life. I remember hearing about a young girl who lived in a busy city. She was always rushing from school to lessons, her mind filled with the noise of the streets and the expectations of her teachers. One day, she found a small patch of moss growing in a crack in the pavement. She knelt down and looked at it closely, noticing the tiny, forest-like structures within the green velvet. For a few minutes, the noise of the city faded away. She felt a deep sense of connection to that tiny living thing. That moment of stillness was her meditation. It did not require a quiet room or a special cushion. It only required her attention. We can find these moments anywhere if we look for them. They are the cracks in the busy walls of our lives through which the light of understanding can shine. Wisdom is often found in the most ordinary places. There was a woman who was known for her exceptional weaving. People came from far and wide to buy her cloth, which was said to have a special quality of softness and strength. When asked for her secret, she said that she simply kept her mind on the thread she was holding. If she thought about the cloth she had already finished, the current thread would become uneven. If she worried about how much more she had to weave, the thread would snap. By staying with the single thread in her hands, the entire piece of cloth became a masterpiece. This is a beautiful metaphor for how to live a meaningful life. We do not have to solve the mysteries of the universe all at once. We only have to be present with the thread of the current moment. The path of the Buddha is often described as the middle way. It is the delicate balance between extremes. Just as a lute string must not be too tight or too loose to produce a beautiful sound, our lives flourish when we avoid the extremes of self-indulgence and harsh self-denial. We live in a world that often pushes us toward one end or the other. We are told to consume more, to achieve more, to be more, or we are told to hide away and reject everything. But the middle way suggests a third option, a way of living with moderation and awareness. It is about enjoying the beauty of the world without becoming enslaved by it. It is about taking care of our needs without being driven by greed. This balance brings a sense of harmony that is much more sustainable than the temporary highs of excess. One of the most touching aspects of the early community of practitioners was their diversity. There were kings and beggars, scholars and unlettered workers, all walking the same path. This reminds us that the truth does not care about our social status or our bank accounts. It only cares about the sincerity of our heart. There is a story of a man who was considered an outcast by his society, someone who was forced to do the most menial tasks. He felt invisible and worthless until he met the Buddha, who looked at him not as an outcast, but as a fellow human being capable of the highest wisdom. The Buddha did not give him a complex lecture. He simply gave him a clean cloth and asked him to wipe away the dust, while repeating the words, removing the dirt. As the man worked, he began to realize that the dirt was not just on the objects he cleaned, but also the mental habits that kept him trapped in suffering. This simple practice led him to a profound internal shift. It shows us that even the most mundane task can be a vehicle for awakening if approached with the right spirit. We often wait for a big, dramatic event to change our lives, but real change usually happens in small, quiet steps. It is the choice to be a little more patient, a little more generous, or a little more honest in our daily interactions. These small choices accumulate over time, creating a life of integrity and peace. We are the architects of our own experience. Every thought we nurture, every word we speak, and every action we take is a seed planted in the garden of our consciousness. If we plant seeds of kindness, we will eventually harvest a garden of joy. If we plant seeds of resentment, the fruit will be bitter. The law of cause and effect, often called karma, is not a system of punishment and reward from an outside force. It is simply the natural unfolding of our intentions. If we throw a stone into a still pond, ripples will inevitably spread across the surface. Our intentions are like those stones. They set things in motion, often in ways we cannot see immediately. Understanding this gives us a tremendous sense of responsibility and empowerment. We are not victims of fate, but active participants in the creation of our destiny. This does not mean that we can control everything that happens to us, but we can certainly control how we respond. Our response is our freedom. In the space between a stimulus and our reaction, there is a tiny moment where we can choose a different path. Think of a person who is caught in a sudden downpour without an umbrella. They can spend the time being angry at the clouds, cursing the luck, and feeling miserable. Or they can simply accept that it is raining, feel the cool water on their skin, and find a sense of humor in the situation. The rain is the same in both cases, but the experience is completely different. One is a state of suffering, the other is a state of equanimity. This equanimity is a hallmark of a mature spiritual life. It is the ability to remain steady amidst the ups and downs of life, like a mountain that remains unmoved by the wind and the storms. The mountain does not try to stop the wind, it simply stands tall and allows the wind to blow past. There was a traveler who found himself lost in a vast desert. He was exhausted and thirsty, and the horizon seemed to stretch on forever without any sign of water. In his desperation, he began to see mirages of lush oases and sparkling lakes. He would run toward them, only to find more sand. Finally, he sat down and decided to stop chasing the illusions. He began to look at the sand beneath his feet and noticed a small, hardy plant with thick leaves. He realized that where there is a plant, there must be moisture deep underground. He began to dig, and eventually, he found a cool spring. This story illustrates how we often chase the mirages of external happiness, thinking that a new car, a better job, or a different relationship will finally satisfy us. But the source of true contentment is already within us, buried under the layers of our own distracted searching. We often feel that we are separate from the world around us, a lonely island in a vast ocean. But the teachings remind us of our profound interdependence. We are connected to everything and everyone. The air we breathe has been breathed by countless others. The food we eat is the result of the sun, the rain, the soil, and the labor of many hands. When we see this connection, our sense of isolation begins to fade. We realize that the well-being of others is intimately linked to our own well-being. This is the root of true empathy. If I understand that you want to be happy just as I do, and that you feel pain just as I do, it becomes much harder for me to cause you harm. Our common humanity becomes the bridge that spans the gap of our differences. In the time of the Buddha, there was a great emphasis on the value of good friendship. It was said that having noble friends is not just half of the holy life, but the whole of it. This is because we are deeply influenced by the company we keep. If we surround ourselves with people who are kind, honest, and mindful, those qualities will naturally begin to grow in us as well. Friends on the path are those who encourage our best qualities and gently remind us when we stray. They are like mirrors that reflect our potential back to us. In our modern world, where so much interaction happens through screens, the value of genuine, heart-to-heart connection is more important than ever. It is in the simple sharing of a story or a quiet moment of listening that we truly nourish each other. There was once a potter who lived on the outskirts of a bustling town. He was not a wealthy man, but he was very content. He spent his days shaping clay into beautiful vessels. One day, a wealthy merchant came to him and offered a large sum of money for his most beautiful jar. The potter refused, saying that the jar had already been promised to a poor neighbor who needed it to carry water. The merchant was shocked and asked why he would give away something so valuable to someone who could not pay. The potter replied that the value of the jar was not in the gold it could bring, but in the service it could provide. The joy of knowing his neighbor would have water was worth far more to him than a chest of gold. This sense of generosity is a powerful antidote to the greed that often tightens our hearts. Generosity is not just about giving material things. It is also about giving our time, our attention, and our forgiveness. When we forgive someone, we are not necessarily saying that what they did was right, but we are choosing to let go of the heavy weight of resentment. We are giving ourselves the gift of peace. Holding on to anger is like grasping a hot coal with the intent of throwing it at someone else. You are the one who gets burned. The Buddha often spoke about the beauty of a heart that is free from enmity. Such a heart is like a clear lake, reflecting the moon and the stars without distortion. It is a place of refuge for oneself and for others. As we walk through our days, we can practice a gentle kind of curiosity. Instead of immediately labeling things as good or bad, we can simply ask, what is this? What is this feeling in my chest? What is this thought that keeps returning? This curiosity opens up a space for understanding. It allows us to see the patterns of our mind without being enslaved by them. It is like being an explorer in the landscape of our own consciousness. We might find dark caves and thorny bushes, but we will also find hidden meadows and sparkling streams. The goal is not to make the landscape perfect, but to know it thoroughly and to walk through it with grace. Life is a gift that is given to us one moment at a time. We do not have to wait for a special occasion to feel grateful. Gratitude can be found in the warmth of the sun, the taste of a simple meal, or the sound of a loved one's voice. When we cultivate gratitude, we shift our focus from what is lacking to what is present. This shift is incredibly transformative. It turns a meager meal into a feast and a small house into a home. It is a way of acknowledging the countless ways the universe supports us every single day. Even in difficult times, there is usually something we can be grateful for, even if it is just the strength to keep going. There is an old story about a king who wanted to find the secret to eternal happiness. He sent his wise men to the four corners of the world to find the answer. They returned with many scrolls and complex theories, but none of them satisfied the king. Finally, a simple shepherd came to the palace and told the king that the secret was hidden in a ring. On the ring were engraved the words, "This too shall pass." The shepherd explained that when the king was in a moment of great joy, these words would remind him to cherish it because it would not last. And when he was in a moment of great sorrow, these words would give him hope because that too would not last. This simple wisdom of impermanence is the key to a balanced heart. It allows us to ride the waves of life without being drowned by them. When we look at the world, we see that everything is in a state of constant flux. The seasons change, the stars move, and the cells in our bodies are constantly being replaced. This impermanence is not something to be feared. It is the very thing that makes life possible. Without change, there could be no growth, no healing, and no new beginnings. The ending of one thing is always the starting point of another. It is like the breath. We must exhale completely to make room for the next inhale. If we tried to hold our breath, we would soon suffer. Life is the same. We must be willing to let go of the past to fully embrace the present. The Buddha's teachings are often called the Dharma, which means the way things are. It is not a belief system that we have to accept on blind faith. It is an invitation to investigate the nature of reality for ourselves. It is a practical guide for living a life of less suffering and more joy. It is about becoming more human, more awake, and more kind. It is a journey that does not have a final destination, for the path itself is the goal. Every step taken with awareness is a moment of arrival. We are always exactly where we need to be to take the next step. Think about a musician who practices their instrument every day. At first, it is a struggle to get the notes right, and the music feels forced. But with time and patience, the music begins to flow naturally. The musician and the instrument become one. Our spiritual practice is similar. At first, being mindful or compassionate might feel like an effort, something we have to remember to do. But gradually, it becomes a part of who we are. It becomes our natural response to the world. We don't have to try to be kind, we simply are kind because we have cultivated that quality in our hearts. This effortless grace is the fruit of the path. I often think about the image of a lotus flower. It begins its life in the mud at the bottom of a pond. It has to grow through the murky water to reach the surface. But when it finally blooms, it is pure and beautiful, untouched by the mud from which it grew. We are all like that lotus. We live in a world that can be messy, difficult, and confusing. We all have our own version of mud to deal with. But that mud is actually the nourishment we need to grow. Our challenges and our struggles are the very things that help us develop strength, wisdom, and compassion. We don't have to wait for the world to be perfect to bloom. We can bloom right here, in the middle of it all. There was a traveler who was once caught in a thick fog. He couldn't see more than a few feet in front of him and was afraid of falling off a cliff or getting lost. He began to panic, running blindly through the mist. Then he heard the sound of a bell in the distance. He stopped and listened. The sound was clear and steady. He began to walk slowly toward the sound, and with each step, the fog seemed to lift just a little bit. Eventually, he reached a small temple where a monk was ringing the bell. The monk told him that the fog was just a temporary condition of the air, and that the bell was always there, even when he couldn't hear it. The teachings of the Buddha are like that bell. They provide a steady point of reference in the fog of our confusion, guiding us back to our own inner clarity. We all have moments when the fog of life feels overwhelming. We feel lost, uncertain, and afraid. In those moments, it is helpful to remember that the fog is not permanent. It will eventually clear. In the meantime, we can listen for the bell. We can find a small point of peace and stay with it. It might be the breath, a kind word, or a simple act of service. These things anchor us and give us the courage to keep moving forward. We don't have to see the whole path, we only have to see the next few feet. Compassion is the heart of the Dharma. It is the recognition that every living being, from the smallest insect to the most powerful leader, wants to be happy and free from suffering. When we truly feel this, our hearts naturally open. We begin to see others not as strangers or rivals, but as kin. This sense of kinship is what can truly heal our world. It moves us to act with kindness, even when it is not easy. It moves us to listen with patience, even when we disagree. It moves us to offer a helping hand, even when we have little to give. Compassion is not a sign of weakness, it is the ultimate expression of courage. There is a beautiful story of a young monk who was struggling with his practice. He felt that he was making no progress and was ready to give up. He went to his teacher and expressed his frustration. The teacher took him to the edge of a large lake and asked him to throw a handful of salt into the water. Then the teacher asked him to taste the water. The young monk did so and said it tasted fresh. Then the teacher asked him to put a handful of salt into a small cup of water and taste it. The monk made a face and said it was too salty to drink. The teacher explained that our suffering is like the salt. If we have a small heart, a little bit of suffering will make us bitter. But if we have a vast heart, like the lake, the same amount of suffering will not overwhelm us. The goal is not to eliminate all the salt, but to expand the heart. Expanding the heart means making room for everything, the joy and the sorrow, the light and the dark. It means embracing our humanity with all its imperfections. It is a process of softening, of letting down the walls we have built for protection. When we do this, we find that we are much more resilient than we thought. We discover that we can hold the pain of the world without being crushed by it, because we are also holding the love and the beauty. This balance is what allows us to be a source of comfort for others. The Buddha's life was a testament to the power of a single individual to make a difference. He didn't start with a large organization or a grand plan. He started with his own search for truth. And because he was sincere and persistent, his light eventually touched millions of lives. Each of us has that same potential. We might not become world-renowned teachers, but we can bring a little more light into our own corner of the world. We can be the person who offers a smile to a tired cashier, who listens to a friend in need, or who takes care of a small piece of the earth. These small acts of kindness are the true measurements of a successful life. I once knew a man who spent his retirement planting trees along a barren hillside. People asked him why he bothered, as he would likely not live to see them reach their full height. He simply replied that he had enjoyed the shade of trees planted by people he never knew, and he wanted to return the favor. This is the spirit of the Dharma. It is about acting for the benefit of all, without being attached to the results. It is about being a good ancestor to those who will come after us. Our lives are a brief flash in the vastness of time, but what we do with that flash matters immensely. When we think about the meaning of life, we often look for big, profound answers. But perhaps the meaning is found in the way we live each day. It is in the quality of our presence, the sincerity of our words, and the kindness of our actions. It is in the way we handle our disappointments and the way we celebrate our joys. It is in the way we treat the people we encounter, especially those who can do nothing for us. These are the things that truly define us. The Buddha's teachings are a constant reminder to return to these basics, to keep our eyes on what is truly important. There was a great king who was very proud of his magnificent palace. He had filled it with the finest art and the most luxurious furnishings. One day, a traveling sage arrived at the palace gates and asked for a place to stay for the night, calling the palace an inn. The king was offended and told the sage that this was not an inn, but his private palace. The sage asked the king who had lived in the palace before him. The king replied that his father had lived there. The sage then asked who had lived there before his father. The king said his grandfather. The sage smiled and said that if people stay here for a while and then move on, is it not exactly like an inn? The king realized the truth of the sage's words. We are all just guests here, staying for a short while before we move on. This realization of our temporary stay can be incredibly liberating. It takes away the pressure to own and control everything. We can appreciate the beauty of the palace while we are here, but we don't have to be devastated when it is time to leave. We can enjoy our relationships, our work, and our experiences, knowing that they are precious precisely because they are fleeting. This doesn't make life less meaningful, it makes it more so. It encourages us to live with a sense of urgency and appreciation. We don't want to waste our time on petty grievances or mindless distractions. We want to live fully, with our hearts wide open. Every evening, as the sun sets and the stars begin to appear, we have an opportunity to reflect on our day. We can ask ourselves if we lived with awareness and kindness. We can acknowledge our mistakes with a sense of gentle forgiveness and resolve to do better tomorrow. This daily reflection is a way of keeping our internal compass pointed toward the truth. It prevents us from drifting too far off course. It is a way of honoring the life we have been given. The journey of awakening is not about becoming someone else. It is about becoming more of who we already are at our core. It is about stripping away the layers of habit, fear, and confusion to reveal the radiant heart underneath. It is a journey of coming home to ourselves. And the wonderful thing is that we can start this journey anytime, anywhere. We don't need any special equipment or a perfect set of circumstances. We only need our own life, just as it is right now. Each moment is an invitation to wake up, to be present, and to love. Even the stars in the night sky, as steady as they seem, are participating in a vast dance of transformation that reflects the very same patterns we feel in our own hearts during moments of quiet reflection. It is quite a wonder to think that the same elements forming those distant suns are present within us, suggesting that we are never truly alone or disconnected from the grandeur of existence. There was once a seasoned traveler who spent his life climbing the highest peaks, thinking that the truth could only be found at the very top, where the air is thin and the world looks like a miniature toy. One morning, as he reached a summit he had dreamed of for years, he found a tiny purple flower blooming in a crevice of the cold rock. He sat there for hours, realizing that the resilience of that small life was just as profound as the vast horizon he had worked so hard to see. The flower did not ask for an audience or praise, it simply offered its color to the wind. This is the kind of quiet bravery the teachings encourage us to find within our own schedules and domestic routines. We often think of spiritual depth as something reserved for caves or monasteries, yet it is most vibrant when we are standing in a long line at the market or dealing with a difficult neighbor. A famous story tells of a young woman who was once tasked with carrying a brimful bowl of oil through a crowded festival without spilling a single drop. She was so focused on the oil that she didn't see the dancers, the colorful banners, or the musicians. When she returned, the teacher asked her if she had seen the beauty of the festival. She said she had seen nothing but the oil. The teacher then told her to go back and enjoy the festival while still keeping the oil steady. This is the art of living in the world, having our hearts full of the joy of life while keeping our inner awareness balanced and still. When we look at the people around us, we might notice that everyone is carrying an invisible backpack filled with their own stories of grief, hope, and secret triumphs. If we could see the weight others carry, our judgments would likely dissolve into a natural desire to be kind. There was a village physician who was known not just for his medicine, but for his ability to truly listen. A man came to him complaining of a heavy heart that no herbal tea could cure. Instead of a prescription, the physician asked the man to spend the afternoon helping an elderly widow repair her fence. By the time the sun began to set, the man realized his own heaviness had vanished. He hadn't talked about his problems, but the act of turning his attention toward the needs of another had cleared the stagnant air in his soul. The beauty of such simple acts is that they require no special title or wealth. We are all capable of being a source of healing for someone else, often through nothing more than a patient ear or a genuine smile. It is like the way a single candle can light thousands of others without shortening its own life. Happiness is not a limited resource that we must hoard, it is something that multiplies the more we share it. The teachings often remind us that our stinginess usually comes from a fear that there isn't enough to go around, but the heart is an infinite well. The more we draw from it to give to the world, the fresher and clearer the water becomes. In the ancient bamboo groves, students would often watch how the stalks bent in the fierce storms. The trees that were rigid and stiff would often snap under the pressure of the wind, while the flexible bamboo would bow low, touching the ground, and then spring back up once the storm had passed. This flexibility is a quality of the mind that we can all cultivate. Life will inevitably bring winds of change, some of them quite harsh. If we hold on too tightly to our expectations of how things should be, we will find ourselves breaking. But if we can learn to bend, to accept the reality of the situation without losing our roots, we find a strength that is far more durable than any iron pillar. There is a story of a master archer who could hit a target from a great distance with perfect accuracy. One day, a young student challenged him, boasting that he could do the same. The master led the student to a deep chasm spanned by a single, narrow, and slippery log. The master walked out to the middle of the log, stood perfectly still, and hit a distant tree with his arrow. He then stepped back and asked the student to do the same. The student, trembling with fear at the height and the danger, could barely notch his arrow, let alone hit the target. The master told him that while he had mastered the bow, he had not mastered his own mind. If you are worried about falling, you cannot aim true. Most of our struggles in life are not about the target itself, but about the fear of the chasm beneath us. We spend so much time building safety nets and worrying about the what-ifs that we forget to actually walk the path. The teachings invite us to trust in our own capacity to handle whatever arises. This trust is not a blind belief that nothing bad will happen, but a deep confidence that we have the inner resources to face it. It is like a bird sitting on a branch. The bird is not afraid of the branch breaking, because its trust is not in the wood, but in its own wings. When we cultivate our inner wings through mindfulness and understanding, the external world loses its power to terrify us. We can walk through the ups and downs of life with a sense of adventure rather than a sense of dread. Think about the way a potter works with clay. The clay must be moist and pliable to be shaped into a beautiful vase. If it is too dry, it cracks. If it is too wet, it collapses. Our lives also require a certain balance of effort and relaxation. We often push ourselves so hard that we become brittle, or we become so passive that we lose our shape. Finding that sweet spot where we are fully engaged but not stressed is where the magic happens. It is like a musician tuning their instrument before a performance. They don't just start playing, they take the time to ensure every string is in harmony. We can take that same care with our own internal state, checking in with ourselves throughout the day to see if we need to tighten or loosen our grip on things. There was a famous gardener who was asked to design a garden for a great palace. He spent months planting the most exotic flowers and creating intricate pathways. When he was finished, he invited the owner to see it. The owner was impressed but noticed that the gardener had left a pile of dead leaves in one corner. He asked the gardener to sweep them away. The gardener refused, saying that the dead leaves were what gave the garden its soul. Without the decay, there could be no new life. This is a powerful reminder that our messy parts, our failures, and our sorrows are not things to be hidden or swept away. They are the compost that nourishes our wisdom. We cannot have the bloom of the rose without the thorns and the dirt. If we look at our mistakes as lessons rather than as sources of shame, everything changes. A mistake is simply a piece of data telling us that a particular direction didn't work. It is not a reflection of our worth as a human being. There is a story of a monk who was known for his incredible patience. A young man decided to test him and spent an entire hour insulting the monk's family, his appearance, and his beliefs. The monk simply sat there, listening with a calm expression. When the man finally ran out of breath, the monk asked if the man would like a cup of water, as he must be thirsty after talking so much. The man was stunned. He realized that his anger was like a gift that the monk had simply declined to accept. If someone tries to give you a gift and you don't take it, to whom does the gift belong? It remains with the giver. This perspective allows us to move through the world with a great deal of freedom. We don't have to be the victims of other people's moods or the world's chaos. We can choose what we take in and what we let pass by. It is like being a gatekeeper of our own hearts. We can decide which thoughts are allowed to stay and which ones are just visitors passing through. Most of our stress comes from identifying too closely with every passing thought, as if a cloud in the sky were the sky itself. But if we can step back and observe the clouds, we realize that the sky remains vast, blue, and unaffected by the weather. I recall a story about a fisherman who lived by a great lake. Every day he went out and caught just enough fish to feed his family and sell a few to buy oil and grain. One day, a wealthy businessman saw him napping under a tree in the afternoon and asked why he wasn't out catching more fish. The businessmen told him that if he worked harder, he could buy a bigger boat, eventually own a fleet of ships, and then retire and spend his days napping under a tree. The fisherman looked at him, confused, and said that he was already doing exactly that. This story isn't about being lazy, it's about knowing when you have enough. We often spend our entire lives chasing a future state of peace, not realizing that the peace we seek is available to us right now, if we can just stop the endless pursuit. Gratitude is the bridge that leads us back to the present moment. When we are grateful, we are acknowledging that what we have is sufficient. This doesn't mean we stop growing or dreaming, but it means we do so from a place of abundance rather than a place of lack. There is a beautiful practice of noticing 3 small things each day that bring a sense of wonder. It could be the way the light hits a glass of water, the sound of a child's laughter, or the smell of rain on hot pavement. These small moments are the true building blocks of a happy life. They are often overlooked because they are so common, but they are the very things that make life worth living. In the old stories, there was a king who was so obsessed with his own reflection that he had mirrors placed in every room of his palace. He spent his days admiring his appearance and his fine clothes. One day, a wise old woman visited him and handed him a clear piece of glass. She told him to look through it, not at it. When he did, he saw the people of his kingdom working in the fields, the children playing, and the beauty of the mountains. He realized that for years he had been looking at a reflection and missing the world. This is what happens when we are trapped in our own egos. We see everything in relation to ourselves, constantly asking, how does this affect me? But when we look through the glass, we see the interconnectedness of all things, and our own small concerns begin to fade into the background. There is a certain lightness that comes with this realization. We don't have to be the center of the universe. We can just be a part of it. This shift in perspective is like taking off a heavy suit of armor that we didn't even know we were wearing. We can move more easily, breathe more deeply, and connect more authentically with others. We begin to understand that the person sitting across from us is just another traveler on the same road, facing similar challenges and seeking the same warmth. This shared journey is what binds us together. There was once a stone carver who worked on a great cathedral. He spent his days chipping away at a block of granite, often in the cold and the rain. Someone asked him if he was tired of his difficult job. He looked up and said that he wasn't just carving stone, he was building a house for the soul. This sense of purpose can transform even the most repetitive task. Whether we are washing dishes, driving a car, or working at a computer, we can do it with the intention of contributing to the harmony of the whole. Our attitude is the invisible ingredient that determines the flavor of our actions. One of the most profound teachings is the idea that our true nature is like a golden statue that has been covered in layers of mud and clay for centuries. People might walk past it and think it is just a lump of dirt. But if someone takes the time to carefully chip away the clay, the gold underneath is found to be as bright and pure as ever. The clay didn't change the gold, it only hid it. Our spiritual journey is a process of removing that clay. The clay consists of our fears, our prejudices, our anger, and our ignorance. These things are not who we are, they are just layers that have accumulated over time. Underneath it all, there is a core of wisdom and love that is our birthright. The process of chipping away the clay requires patience and a gentle touch. If we use a heavy hammer, we might damage what is underneath. Instead, we use the tools of mindfulness and compassion. We notice when a layer of anger arises, and we gently acknowledge it. Ah, there is anger. By simply observing it without judgment, the anger begins to lose its grip. It's like turning on a light in a dark room. The darkness doesn't have to be fought or pushed out, it simply vanishes when the light is present. This is the power of awareness. It doesn't require us to be perfect, it only requires us to be awake. I once heard about a man who was very concerned about the state of the world. He saw so much conflict and suffering that he felt paralyzed by despair. He went to a wise woman and asked what he could possibly do to help. She told him to go home and take care of his own garden. He was disappointed, thinking she would give him a grand mission. But as he began to work in his garden, he noticed that his neighbors started to take interest. They began to clean up their own yards, and soon the entire street was transformed. This is how change happens. It starts with the individual, with the small, quiet choices we make in our own lives. We cannot force the world to be peaceful, but we can be a peaceful presence in the world. Peace is not the absence of conflict, but the ability to remain centered in the midst of it. It's like the deep ocean water that remains calm even when there are huge waves on the surface. We can learn to access that deep calm within ourselves, even when our lives feel chaotic. This is not about escaping reality, but about grounding ourselves in a deeper truth. When we are grounded, we are much more effective at dealing with the problems on the surface. We can respond with clarity and kindness rather than reacting out of fear and frustration. In the old days, travelers would often leave small piles of stones, called cairns, to mark the path for those who came after them. These simple markers were a way of saying, I have been here, and this is the way. Each of us, in our own way, is leaving markers for others. The way we treat our children, the way we handle our successes and failures, and the way we age all serve as a map for those who are watching us. We have the opportunity to leave a path of kindness and wisdom. This is a beautiful responsibility. It gives our lives a meaning that transcends our personal desires. The moon does not try to shine, it simply reflects the light of the sun. In the same way, we don't have to try to be holy or special. We just have to be clear enough to reflect the natural goodness of the universe. When we are free from the clutter of our own egos, that light shines through us naturally. People are drawn to that light, not because of us, but because it reminds them of the light within themselves. This is the most profound service we can offer to the world, to be a clear reflection of the truth. There was a small child who was walking along a beach after a storm. Thousands of starfish had been washed up on the sand and were dying in the sun. The child began to pick them up one by one and throw them back into the ocean. An old man watched him and said that it was a waste of time, as there were so many starfish that he couldn't possibly make a difference. The child picked up another starfish, threw it into the waves, and said that it made a difference to that one. This is the heart of compassionate action. We don't have to save the whole world at once. We just have to do what is in front of us, with a sincere heart. Living with awareness means realizing that every choice matters. The way we speak to ourselves in the silence of our own minds is just as important as the way we speak to others. If we are constantly berating ourselves, we are creating a climate of hostility within our own hearts. But if we can learn to speak to ourselves with the same kindness we would offer to a dear friend, we create a sanctuary of peace. This internal kindness is the foundation for everything else. It allows us to be more patient with others, more resilient in the face of challenges, and more open to the beauty of life. I often think about the image of a bridge. A bridge doesn't take sides, it simply connects two shores. It allows people to move from one place to another. We can be like that bridge, helping to connect people, to heal divisions, and to facilitate understanding. This doesn't mean we have to agree with everyone, but we can seek to find a common ground that lies beneath our differences. We can look for the human in the person we find most difficult. When we do this, the walls of separation begin to crumble, and we find that we are all part of the same vast, intricate web of life. The world is like a giant tapestry, and each of our lives is a single thread. We might not be able to see the whole pattern from where we are standing, but we can ensure that our thread is strong and vibrant. We can weave in colors of kindness, honesty, and joy. When we do our part well, the entire tapestry becomes more beautiful. This is the quiet, steady work of a life well lived. It doesn't require fame or fortune, it only requires a commitment to being as awake and as kind as we can be in this very moment. There was a traveler who was thirsty and found a well. He had no bucket or rope, so he sat by the well and waited. After a while, a young girl came by with a bucket and offered him a drink. He thanked her and asked how she knew he was thirsty. She smiled and said that anyone who sits by a well for that long must be looking for water. Sometimes the truth is right in front of us, but we need someone else to help us access it. We are all here to help each other draw from the well of wisdom. We take turns being the one with the bucket and the one who is thirsty. As we move through the days and weeks, it's helpful to remember that life is not a problem to be solved, but a mystery to be lived. We don't have to have all the answers. We can live with the questions, allowing them to open our hearts and minds. There is a certain beauty in not knowing, in being comfortable with the uncertainty of existence. It allows us to stay curious and humble. It reminds us that we are part of something much larger than ourselves, a grand symphony of which we are only a small, but vital, part. The sound of a bell ringing in a quiet valley has a way of cutting through the noise of our thoughts and bringing us back to the present. We can find our own inner bell that reminds us to stop, breathe, and notice where we are. It could be the sensation of our feet on the ground, the feeling of the air on our face, or the simple awareness of our own existence. Each time we return to the present, we are practicing the art of being alive. We are reclaiming our lives from the distractions and the business that so often pull us away from ourselves. Everything we do is an opportunity to practice. Whether we are facing a major life crisis or just deciding what to have for dinner, we can do it with awareness. We can notice the intentions behind our choices. Are we acting out of fear, habit, or a genuine desire for well-being? By bringing our choices into the light of awareness, we become more intentional about the lives we are creating. We stop being leaves blown about by the wind and start being the navigators of our own journey. This is the true meaning of freedom. In the quiet hours of the night, when the world is still, it's easier to hear the whispers of our own hearts. We can listen to our longings, our fears, and our dreams without the noise of the day to drown them out. We can offer ourselves the gift of silence, allowing the dust of the day to settle so that we can see more clearly. This inner silence is a precious resource, a wellspring of peace that we can carry with us into the busiest of days. It is the steady center of our lives, the place where we can always find refuge and renewal. When we look back on our lives, we often find that the moments that mattered most were not the ones of great achievement, but the ones of deep connection and simple presence. It's the memory of a quiet walk with a friend, the feeling of being truly seen by someone, or the sense of peace that comes from a moment of pure gratitude. These are the true treasures of a life, the things that no one can take away from us. They are the golden threads in the tapestry of our existence, the ones that give it its lasting beauty and value. The teachings of the Buddha are like a map that points us toward these treasures. They remind us of what is truly important and give us the tools to navigate the often confusing landscape of our lives. But like any map, it is only useful if we actually take the steps and do the walking. The path is not something we study, it's something we live. Every step we take with awareness is a step toward freedom. Every act of kindness is a contribution to a more compassionate world. Every moment of presence is a homecoming to ourselves. The river continues to flow, the trees continue to grow, and the seasons continue to turn. We are a part of this natural rhythm, a beautiful and essential part of the whole. Let us walk this path together, with hearts full of wonder and hands ready to help. Let us cherish the gift of our lives and use it well. Let us be kind to ourselves and to each other, knowing that we are all doing the best we can. And let us never forget that underneath all the layers, we are already the gold we are searching for. The morning mist clinging to the surface of a quiet lake reminds us that clarity is often just a layer of stillness away, waiting for the sun to rise and the air to settle. In the same way, the wisdom we seek is rarely hidden behind complex rituals but is often found in the most unassuming corners of our daily existence. There was an old woodcutter who lived on the edge of a great forest, a man whose hands were calloused and whose back was bent from years of labor. People from the city would often visit him, asking why he looked so youthful in spirit despite his weary body. He would simply point to his axe and say that when he chops wood, he only chops wood. He explained that most people chop wood while their minds are already at the market, or back at home arguing with a ghost from the past. By staying with the rhythmic swing of the blade and the scent of the fresh pine, he remained undivided and whole. This singleness of heart is a sanctuary that no external storm can breach. We often scatter our energy in 1,000 directions, trying to live 5 minutes into the future or 10 years in the past, yet the only place where we have any power is the precise inch of ground where our feet are currently resting. There is a story of a traveler who found a beautiful garden in the middle of a wasteland. He asked the owner how such beauty was possible in such a harsh place. The owner replied that he simply focused on 1 square foot of earth at a time. He didn't worry about the entire desert, he only worried about the small patch of soil in front of him. This is how we transform the landscapes of our own lives. We don't need to fix everything at once. We only need to be sincere with the task at hand, whether it is listening to a friend or simply folding the laundry with a sense of care. Consider the nature of the echo. If we shout words of anger into a canyon, the canyon returns anger. If we sing a song of joy, the mountains sing back joy. Our lives are like that canyon, constantly reflecting the energy we project into the world. In the ancient records, there was a man known for his sharp tongue and his constant complaints about how poorly the world treated him. He visited a sage who lived in a hall of mirrors. When the man entered the room, he saw 1,000 angry versions of himself staring back. He realized that the world wasn't attacking him, it was simply reflecting his own posture. When he softened his face and offered a small smile, 1,000 smiles bloomed around him. This realization is a turning point for any seeker. We stop asking why the world is so dark and start looking for the candle we forgot to light within ourselves. This internal light is fed by the oil of patience. We live in an era that demands instant results, where even a few seconds of waiting feels like an affront to our progress. But nature does not hurry, yet everything is accomplished. A seed does not rush to become a tree. It waits in the dark, gathering strength and responding to the subtle calls of the earth and the rain. We can learn to trust our own timing, realizing that the periods of waiting or stillness are not empty gaps, but essential times of rooting. There was a young monk who was impatient to reach enlightenment and practiced with such intensity that he became exhausted and bitter. His teacher took him to a stream and pointed to the water flowing over the rocks. The teacher noted that the water does not fight the rocks, it simply flows around them, and over time, the hard stone becomes smooth and round. Gentleness, the teacher said, is more powerful than force. When we approach our own flaws with gentleness, they begin to lose their sharp edges. Instead of waging a war against our habits, we can invite them into the light of understanding. There was a woman who struggled with a deep sense of inadequacy, always feeling she was not enough. One day, she watched a master weaver at work. The weaver used threads of many different colors and textures. Some were rough, some were shiny, some were dull. The woman asked why the weaver didn't just use the most beautiful threads. The weaver replied that a tapestry made only of gold thread would be flat and lifeless. It is the contrast between the dark and the light, the rough and the smooth, that creates the depth and the beauty of the pattern. Our lives are also tapestries, and our struggles are the dark threads that give the bright moments their brilliance. There is a profound freedom in allowing ourselves to be a work in progress. We don't have to wait until we are perfect to be useful or happy. A cracked bowl can still hold flowers, and sometimes the light shines most beautifully through the cracks. In a famous old story, a water carrier had 2 large pots, one of which had a crack. Every day, the carrier arrived at his destination with only 1.5 pots of water. The cracked pot felt ashamed of its failure to be perfect. One day, the carrier told the pot to look at the side of the path. On the side where the perfect pot traveled, the ground was dry and dusty. But on the side of the cracked pot, there was a trail of beautiful wildflowers that had been nourished by the leaking water. The carrier had planted seeds there, knowing the pot would water them. Our defects often serve a purpose we cannot see, touching the world in ways we never intended. This perspective helps us to let go of the heavy burden of comparison. We often look at the edited highlights of other people's lives and wonder why ours feels so unpolished. But the moon does not compete with the sun, both shine when it is their time. There was a village where a great musician lived, and everyone praised his skill. A young boy who played a simple bamboo flute felt embarrassed to play in the musician's presence. One evening, the great musician overheard the boy playing a simple, heartfelt melody in the woods. The musician stopped and listened, tears in his eyes. He told the boy that while his own music was technically perfect, the boy's music had the sound of the wind and the soul of the forest. Every voice has a unique resonance that the world needs. When we stop trying to sound like someone else, our true melody can finally be heard. Living with a sense of wonder means seeing the miraculous in the mundane. A bowl of rice is not just food, it is a gift from the sun, the rain, the earth, and the hands that tended the fields. When we eat with awareness, we are participating in a sacred communion with the entire universe. There was a teacher who once gave his students a single raisin and asked them to spend 20 minutes eating it. They looked at its texture, smelled its sweetness, and felt the bursts of flavor as they chewed slowly. Many of the students realized they had never actually tasted a raisin before, even though they had eaten thousands. This is how we miss our lives, by rushing through the small things to get to the big things, only to realize that life is made entirely of small things. True abundance is not found in having much, but in needing little. When we simplify our desires, we find that we have more time and energy for the things that truly matter: connection, creativity, and service. There was a scholar who traveled across many lands to find the secret of happiness. He eventually found a hermit living in a simple hut on a mountain. The scholar was surprised to find the hermit laughing and singing. He asked the hermit how he could be so happy with no possessions. The hermit replied that he owned the entire sky, the mountains, and the sound of the wind in the trees. Since he didn't try to lock them in a chest, no one could ever steal them from him. This sense of owning through appreciation, rather than owning through possession, is a key to a light heart. The breath is our most constant companion, yet we often ignore it until it is labored or thin. It is a bridge between the body and the mind, a rhythmic reminder of the constant exchange between ourselves and the world. When we are anxious, the breath becomes shallow. When we are at peace, it becomes deep and slow. By consciously slowing the breath, we can send a signal of safety to our entire system. It is like a mother humming a lullaby to a restless child. We can use the breath to anchor ourselves in the middle of a chaotic day. No matter what is happening around us, we can always return to the simple sensation of the air entering and leaving the body. It is a home we carry with us wherever we go. There is a story about a great storm that swept through a forest. The mighty oaks stood tall and defiant, but many of them were uprooted by the force of the wind. The reeds by the river, however, survived the storm perfectly. They didn't try to stand against the wind, they simply bowed and allowed the wind to pass over them. When the storm ended, they stood back up, refreshed and clean. This is the wisdom of non-resistance. It doesn't mean being weak or passive, it means having the intelligence to know when to yield. When we stop fighting the reality of our circumstances and start working with them, we find a hidden source of energy that was previously being wasted in the struggle. Compassion is like a warm blanket on a cold night. It doesn't necessarily change the temperature of the room, but it makes the cold bearable. When we see someone suffering, our first instinct is often to try to fix it or to look away because it is too painful. But true compassion is simply the willingness to stay present with the pain, both our own and that of others. There was a woman whose child had a nightmare and woke up crying. The mother didn't try to explain the science of dreams or tell the child not to be afraid. She simply held the child in her arms and whispered, "I am here." In that presence, the fear dissolved. This is what we can offer the world, the healing power of being fully present, without judgment or a hidden agenda. The quality of our attention is the most valuable gift we can give. In a world where everyone is competing for our eyes and ears, giving someone our undivided attention is an act of deep love. It says, "You matter. Your story is heard." There was a young man who visited his grandfather every week. They would sit on the porch for hours, sometimes without saying a word. The young man's friends asked him what they talked about. He said they didn't talk much, but he always felt more like himself after sitting with his grandfather. The grandfather's presence was a quiet mirror in which the young man could see his own reflection more clearly. We can be that presence for each other, providing a space where the soul can breathe. The path of awakening is often described as a journey from the head to the heart. We spend so much time analyzing, labeling, and judging that we lose touch with the direct experience of being alive. Wisdom is not something we think, it is something we feel in the marrow of our bones. It is the intuitive knowing that we are a part of a much larger story. There was a philosopher who spent his life writing books about the nature of love. On his deathbed, he saw a small bird feeding its young in a nest outside his window. He realized that the bird knew more about love in that one moment than he had learned in 40 years of study. Love is an action, a way of moving through the world with an open hand and a kind heart. The stars above us have been shining for billions of years, witnessing the rise and fall of countless civilizations. In the grand scale of time, our worries about a missed deadline or a social slight are like tiny ripples on a vast ocean. This perspective is not meant to make our lives feel small or insignificant, but to give us a sense of proportion. It allows us to take our responsibilities seriously but not ourselves. We can do our best and then leave the results to the universe. There was a famous painter who was asked how he knew when a painting was finished. He said it was never truly finished, but there comes a moment when you must put down the brush and let the painting live its own life. We can do the same with our days, put in the effort, and then let them go. Forgiveness is the act of unlocking a door and realizing that the prisoner was actually yourself. When we hold on to a grudge, we are tying ourselves to the person who hurt us with a rope of resentment. We think our anger is a punishment for them, but they are often miles away, unaware of our suffering. Forgiving is not about saying what happened was okay. It is about deciding that we no longer want to carry the weight of the past. There was a man who visited a prison and spoke to a prisoner who had been there for 20 years. The prisoner said that the day he truly forgave the people who had wronged him was the day he finally felt free, even though he was still behind bars. Freedom is an internal state, a choice we make in every moment. The cycle of the seasons teaches us about the necessity of letting go. In autumn, the trees don't struggle to keep their leaves, they simply let them fall, knowing that this surrender is necessary for the renewal of spring. If the trees tried to hold on to the old leaves, they wouldn't have the energy to grow new ones. We also have leaves that need to fall, old identities, outdated beliefs, and relationships that no longer serve our growth. This letting go can be painful, like a kind of small death, but it is always followed by a new birth. The forest floor is covered in the remains of what has passed, yet it is the most fertile ground for what is to come. There is a secret joy in the act of giving without expecting anything in return. It breaks the cycle of transactional living where we only do something if there is a benefit for us. There was a woman who used to leave small bouquets of flowers on the doorsteps of people she knew were having a hard time. She never signed her name and she never stayed to see their reaction. She said that the joy of imagining their surprise was enough for her. This anonymous kindness is a powerful way to soften the ego. It reminds us that we are part of a hidden network of care that keeps the world turning. We are all beneficiaries of countless acts of kindness from people we will never meet. Patience is not just about waiting, it is about how we behave while we are waiting. It is the ability to maintain a calm and steady heart even when things are not going our way. There was a potter who was trying to fire a particularly difficult glaze. He had to stay by the kiln for 36 hours, carefully monitoring the temperature. If he fell asleep or got distracted for even a few minutes, the entire batch would be ruined. He sat there in the heat and the smoke, not with a sense of drudgery, but with a sense of devotion. He treated the fire like a guest and the clay like a child. This quality of devoted patience transforms work into a form of prayer. The world is full of sounds, but it is also full of silence. If we listen closely, we can hear the silence underneath the noise. It is the background upon which the music of life is played. There was a musician who was asked what the most important note was. He replied that the most important part of music is the space between the notes. Without that space, the music would just be a wall of sound. Our lives also need space between the notes. We need moments of quiet reflection where we can digest our experiences and reconnect with our center. In the silence, we can hear the subtle guidance of our own intuition, which is often drowned out by the clamor of the world. Humility is not about thinking less of yourself, it is about thinking of yourself less. It is the realization that we are a small part of a vast and mysterious whole. There was a great leader who was known for his wisdom and power. When he walked through the city, he would always stop to talk to the street sweepers and the water carriers. When asked why, he said that every person he met was his teacher in some way. The street sweeper knew things about the city that the leader would never know. This openness to learning from everyone and everything is the mark of a truly great soul. It keeps the heart fresh and the mind curious. The beauty of a sunset is that it doesn't try to prove anything. It doesn't ask for a 5-star review or 1,000 likes. It simply unfolds in all its glory and then fades into the night. We can learn to live our lives with that same kind of unself-conscious grace. We can do our work, offer our love, and express our creativity without being obsessed with how it is being perceived. When we are free from the need for validation, we can be truly authentic. We can act from a place of inner necessity rather than external pressure. This authenticity is like a magnet. It naturally attracts the people and opportunities that are in alignment with our true selves. I remember a story of a young girl who found a cocoon in the garden. She saw the butterfly struggling to get out through a tiny hole and decided to help by cutting the cocoon open. The butterfly emerged easily, but its wings were shriveled and it could never fly. The girl didn't realize that the struggle to get through the small opening was nature's way of forcing fluid into the wings so they would be strong enough for flight. Our own struggles are often the very things that give us the strength to fly. If life were too easy, we would never develop the resilience and the wisdom that define a mature human being. We can learn to bless the struggle, knowing it is preparing us for something beautiful. The light of the sun reaches everyone equally, whether they are a saint or a sinner. It doesn't judge, it simply provides warmth and light. We can practice a similar kind of equanimous love. This doesn't mean we agree with everyone's actions, but we can maintain a basic level of goodwill toward all beings. It is like the earth that supports everyone's footsteps, regardless of who they are. This kind of love is a powerful force for peace. It begins with the simple recognition of our shared vulnerability. We are all subject to old age, sickness, and death. We all want to be loved and understood. Every day is a new opportunity to begin again. No matter what happened yesterday, today is a clean slate. We can choose to be a little more mindful, a little more kind, and a little more patient. These small changes might seem insignificant in the moment, but over a lifetime, they create a profound transformation. It is like the way a slow-moving glacier carves out a vast valley. Our daily choices are the forces that shape the landscape of our character. We are the masters of our own evolution, and the path is always right beneath our feet, waiting for us to take the next step with a clear mind and a loving heart. The stars continue to wheel overhead, the tides continue to rise and fall, and the breath continues to move in and out. We are part of this grand, eternal rhythm. Let us move with it, not against it. Let us find the peace that comes from being in harmony with the way things are. Let us be a source of light for ourselves and for each other, trusting that the same wisdom that guides the planets also lives within us. There is nowhere to go and nothing to become that we are not already in essence. We are simply waking up to the truth of our own being, one moment at a time, with a sense of deep gratitude and quiet joy. The golden light filtering through the canopy of an ancient orchard reminds us that every fruit has its own season for ripening, and no amount of pulling at the petals will make a flower bloom before it is ready. This natural patience is a quality we often lose in our haste to achieve results, yet it is the very foundation of a peaceful mind. There was a young stone carver who was tasked with creating a statue of a leaping deer. He spent weeks staring at the rough block of marble, but he did not touch his chisel. When the village elders asked why he was wasting time, he replied that he was waiting for the deer to reveal itself within the stone. He explained that if he forced his own will upon the marble, he would only create a cold imitation of life, but if he waited until he could feel the heartbeat of the deer in the grain of the rock, the statue would practically carve itself. This wisdom of waiting for the right moment is something we can apply to our own inner struggles. We often try to solve our emotional problems with the same frantic energy that created them, like trying to clear a muddy pond by beating the water with a stick. If we simply sit by the edge and wait, the silt naturally settles to the bottom, and the water becomes clear of its own accord. In the early days of the community, there was a man who was known for his incredible restlessness. He could not sit still for even a few minutes without his mind wandering to a dozen different places. He sought guidance from a senior monk who lived in a small hut near a waterfall. The monk didn't give him a lecture on concentration. He simply asked the man to help him carry water from the stream using a bucket that had a tiny hole in the bottom. At first, the man ran as fast as he could, trying to reach the hut before the water leaked out, but he arrived with an empty bucket every time. He became frustrated and angry at the futility of the task. The monk smiled and told him to walk slowly and enjoy the scenery. The man obeyed, and as he walked at a gentle pace, He noticed the way the moss grew on the wet stones and how the sunlight danced on the water droplets falling from the bucket. When he reached the hut, the bucket was still mostly empty, but his heart was full of peace. The monk pointed out that while the water was lost, the man had gained a moment of pure awareness. The leaking of our lives, the lost time, the mistakes, the fleeting nature of our efforts, is not a failure if we remain present to the beauty of the walk itself. This presence is a form of wealth that cannot be measured by coins or titles. We often think of success as something we acquire, but true success is a quality of being. There was a story of a queen who possessed everything a person could desire, a vast kingdom, loyal subjects, and a palace filled with wonders. Yet, she felt a strange emptiness that she could not name. One day, she saw a wandering musician playing a simple flute made of bone. He was dressed in rags, yet he looked more regal than any king she had ever met. She offered him a room in her palace and the finest food, but he declined, saying that the whole world was his home and the sky was his roof. He told the queen that her walls were not for keeping others out, but for keeping herself in. The walls we build around our hearts, often out of a desire for protection, eventually become our prisons. We fear that if we are too open, we will be hurt, but the cost of that safety is a life lived in shadows. The teaching suggests that a heart that is willing to break is a heart that is also capable of containing the entire universe. There was a gardener who grew the most beautiful roses in the province. When asked how he kept the soil so rich, he admitted that he used the very thorns that fell from the bushes. He crushed them and returned them to the earth. This is the alchemy of the spiritual path. We take our sharpest pains, our most difficult memories, and our stinging disappointments, and we turn them into the very nutrients that allow our compassion to grow. Nothing in our experience is ever truly wasted if we know how to use it. A traveler once got lost in a dense fog and wandered into a dark, damp cave. He was terrified of the shadows and the silence, but as his eyes adjusted, he saw a faint glimmer on the walls. He realized the cave was lined with precious minerals that only shone in the dark. If he had stayed in the bright sunlight, he never would have discovered that hidden treasure. Our dark periods, the times of loneliness, grief, or uncertainty, often contain insights that are invisible during our moments of triumph. We learn more about our strength when we are tested than when everything is going our way. There is a certain dignity in the way a tree loses its leaves in the winter. It does not cling to them or mourn their loss, it stands bare and silent, trusting in the life that continues to flow deep within its roots. We, too, can learn to stand in our own nakedness, without the labels and roles that we use to define ourselves. Who are we when we are not a worker, a parent, or a friend? Beneath all the stories is a vast, silent awareness that is birthless and deathless. This is what the great sage discovered under the Bodhi tree, that our true identity is not the wave, but the ocean itself. The wave might rise and fall, it might crash against the shore or disappear into the depths, but the water remains unchanged. Finding this oceanic perspective allows us to navigate the storms of life with a sense of humor. We realize that most of what we worry about is just weather on the surface. There was a famous teacher who was often seen laughing to himself while walking alone. When a student asked him what was so funny, the teacher replied that he had just realized that for 20 years he had been searching for his keys while holding them in his hand the whole time. We are all searching for peace, for love, for meaning, as if they were somewhere else, somewhere out there, to be found. But the keys are already in our hands. The peace we seek is the very awareness that is looking through our eyes right now. This realization brings a profound sense of relaxation. We stop trying to get somewhere and start being here. A man was once seen searching for something under a street lamp at night. A passerby asked what he had lost, and the man said his ring. They searched together for a while, but found nothing. The passerby asked where exactly he had dropped it, and the man pointed to a dark alleyway far away. "Then why are you looking here?" the passerby asked. The man replied, "Because the light is better here." We often look for happiness in the bright places, the external world of entertainment, consumption, and social approval, because it seems easier. But the ring is in the dark alleyway of our own interior world, and that is where we must eventually look if we want to find it. The interior world is not a scary place when approached with kindness. It is like an old attic filled with dusty boxes. Some of the boxes contain painful memories, while others hold forgotten dreams. By opening them one by one, we begin to clear the space. We don't have to throw everything away, but we can organize it, seeing each item for what it is. There was a woman who kept a gratitude jar on her table. Every time something good happened, no matter how small, she wrote it on a slip of paper and put it in the jar. On days when she felt overwhelmed by the darkness, she would empty the jar and read the slips. She realized that the good moments were just as frequent as the bad ones, but she had a habit of only remembering the shadows. Our memories are not objective records, they are edited by our current state of mind. If we are angry, we remember every slight. If we are grateful, we remember every kindness. By consciously choosing to focus on the light, we literally change the landscape of our past. There is a story about a king who asked his two wisest advisors to travel through his kingdom. He told one to find every beautiful thing and the other to find every ugly thing. They both returned a year later. The first advisor described a paradise of flowers, kind people, and magnificent sunsets. The second advisor described a wasteland of thorns, greedy people, and miserable storms. They had walked the same roads, but they had lived in two different worlds. We are the creators of the world we inhabit. Our perceptions are the brushes with which we paint our reality. If we want a more beautiful world, we must begin by cleaning our own lenses. This is not about denial or toxic positivity, but about a radical honesty that includes the beauty as well as the pain. There was a monk who was known for his ability to find something to appreciate in every situation. Even when he was falsely accused of a crime and sent to work in a coal mine, he remarked on the incredible strength of his fellow workers and the interesting patterns of the dust in the air. His presence was so uplifting that the mine eventually became a place of camaraderie and song. He didn't change the mine, but he changed the experience of being in it. This inner freedom is the ultimate goal of the teachings. It is a freedom that no prison can take away and no wealth can buy. It is the freedom to choose our response to life. A traveler once came across a man who was sitting by a bridge, tossing stones into the water. Every time a stone splashed, the man laughed. The traveler asked why he was so happy doing something so simple. The man replied that he was practicing letting go. Each stone represented a worry, a regret, or a desire. As the stone sank to the bottom of the river, he felt a little lighter. He realized that the river didn't mind the stones, it just kept flowing. Our lives are like that river, and our thoughts are the stones. We can choose to carry the stones in our pockets, or we can toss them into the water. The weight we carry is mostly made of shoulds and oughtos. We feel we should be further along, we ought to be more successful, we should be happier. These mental burdens are far heavier than any physical weight. There was a young woman who was a gifted artist, but she stopped painting because she was afraid her work wasn't good enough compared to the masters. An old painter told her that the masters became masters because they were willing to be not good enough for a long time. He said that every bad painting was a necessary step toward a good one. We must give ourselves permission to be beginners, to be messy, to be human. The path of the Buddha is often called the path of the great effort, but it is an effort of a very special kind. It is not the effort of a soldier trying to conquer an enemy, but the effort of a mother trying to soothe a crying baby. It is a persistent, gentle, and patient effort. We don't wake up all at once, we wake up in tiny increments, like the way the dawn slowly dissolves the night. One day we find we are a little less reactive, a little more generous, a little more at ease with the silence. These small shifts are the true miracles. There was a village that had been suffering from a long drought. A famous rainmaker was brought in. He didn't perform any rituals or dances, he simply went into a small hut and stayed there for 3 days. On the 4th day, it began to rain. When asked how he did it, he said he didn't do anything. He just went into the hut to get himself into harmony with the universe, and when he was in harmony, the rain naturally fell. When we get ourselves into harmony, the rain of grace naturally falls upon our lives. We stop fighting the current and start using the energy of the river to move us forward. This harmony is found through the practice of ethics, not as a set of rules, but as a way of living that causes the least amount of harm. When we lie or steal or act out of malice, we create turbulence in our own minds. We have to remember the lies, hide the stolen goods, and deal with the repercussions of our anger. This turbulence makes it impossible for the water of our mind to become clear. Living with integrity is like clearing the rocks from a stream so the water can flow smoothly. It is a gift we give to ourselves. There was a merchant who was known for his absolute honesty. One day, a customer accidentally overpaid him. The merchant closed his shop and traveled for 2 days to return the extra money. His friends told him he was foolish, as the customer would never have known. The merchant replied, "The customer might not know, but the merchant knows." This self-respect is the foundation of a stable mind. When we know we have acted with honor, we have a quiet confidence that no one can take from us. We don't have to look over our shoulder or worry about being found out. We are at peace with ourselves, and that peace radiates outward, touching everyone we meet. Kindness is a language that the deaf can hear and the blind can see. It transcends words and cultures. I remember hearing about a man who was traveling in a foreign country where he didn't speak the language. He got lost and was feeling very vulnerable. An old woman saw him, took him by the hand, and led him to her house. She gave him food and a warm place to sleep, all without a single word of common language. Her kindness was a bridge that crossed the gap of their differences. This is the power of our common humanity. When we strip away the layers of nationality, religion, and politics, we find the same beating heart underneath. The stars continue their silent journey across the sky, indifferent to our dramas and our triumphs. This vast indifference is actually a form of comfort. It reminds us that we are part of a grand design that is much bigger than our personal concerns. We can let go of the need to be the protagonist of every story. We can be a minor character, a background singer, or just a witness to the beauty of it all. There is a great relief in this. We don't have to carry the world on our shoulders, the world is already carrying us. Every breath is a reminder of this support. We don't have to do the breathing, the body breathes itself. We don't have to make the heart beat, it beats by itself. We are being lived by a force that is far more intelligent than our conscious minds. When we trust this force, we can finally let go of the steering wheel and enjoy the ride. This trust is the essence of faith, not faith in a person or a doctrine, but faith in the fundamental goodness of life. It is the belief that no matter what happens, the universe knows what it is doing. There was a traveler who was crossing a mountain pass during a blizzard. He was exhausted and ready to give up when he saw a small light in the distance. He struggled toward it and found a simple shelter where an old man was tending a fire. The old man didn't ask for the traveler's name or his history, he just offered him a place by the warmth. The traveler realized that the light was not a destination, but a sanctuary. Our practice is like that fire. It provides warmth and light in the middle of the storms of life. It doesn't stop the blizzard, but it gives us the strength to endure it. As we move through our days, we can be that light for others. We don't have to be perfect, we just have to be willing to share our warmth. A kind word, a steady presence, or a simple act of listening can be the fire that helps someone else get through their blizzard. This is how we participate in the healing of the world. It's not about big gestures, but about the small, consistent offerings of a compassionate heart. We are all walking each other home, and the path is much easier when we walk together. The sound of the wind in the pines, the taste of a ripe plum, the feeling of the sun on our skin, these are the real teachings. They are the direct expressions of reality, unmediated by thought or concept. The Buddha often taught by simply holding up a flower or pointing to the moon. He was showing us that the truth is not in the words, but in the experience they point to. If we spend all our time studying the map, we never see the mountain. Let us put down the map for a while and just look at the mountain. Let us feel its strength and its silence. Let us realize that we are not separate from the mountain, we are the same stuff. The same atoms that make up the granite are in our bones. The same water that flows in the streams flows in our veins. We are a part of the earth, not just on it. When we realize this, we stop treating the world as a resource to be exploited and start treating it as a sacred garden to be tended. Our relationship with the environment becomes a reflection of our relationship with ourselves. If we are at war with ourselves, we will be at war with the world. If we find peace within, we will naturally seek to create peace without. There was a village where a great tree grew in the center of the square. It provided shade in the summer and protection from the wind in the winter. For generations, the people had cared for the tree, and the tree had cared for the people. One day, a newcomer wanted to cut down the tree to build a larger hall. The elders refused, saying that the tree was the soul of the village. They understood that the value of the tree was not in the wood it could provide, but in the connection it represented. We are all part of that same tree of life. Every being is a leaf, a branch, or a root. When we harm one part, we harm the whole. When we nourish one part, we nourish the whole. Let us be the ones who nourish. Let us be the ones who bring a little more kindness, a little more awareness, and a little more love into every room we enter. Not because we have to, but because it is the most natural and beautiful way to live. Life is a short dance, and the music is playing right now. We don't need to know the steps, we just need to move with the rhythm. Let us dance with a light heart and an open mind, trusting that the dance itself is the meaning we have been searching for. The scent of dry earth meeting the first drops of a summer rain carries a silent message about the power of renewal that exists within every living thing, a reminder that even the most parched heart can soften and bloom when the timing is right. We often look at our lives as a series of problems to be solved, but what if we saw them instead as a garden to be tended with curiosity and patience? There was a young woman who lived in a city of stone and steel, where the pace of life was so fast that people often forgot the color of the sky. She felt a deep, nagging sense of dissatisfaction, as if she were a ghost haunting her own life. One day, she found a small, neglected plot of land behind her apartment building, filled with rusted metal and stubborn weeds. Instead of turning away, she began to clear the debris, one handful at a time. She didn't have a grand design or expensive tools, but she had a sincere desire to see something grow. As she worked, she noticed that the simple act of touching the soil and feeling the sun on her neck began to quiet the storms in her mind. She realized that she wasn't just cleaning the land, she was cleaning the windows of her own perception. In the ancient teachings, it is said that the mind is like a mirror that has been covered with dust for lifetimes. We don't need to create a new mirror. We only need to wipe away the dust so that the true nature of reality can be reflected clearly. This wiping away is not a violent or forceful act, but a consistent and gentle one, like the way a river slowly polishes the stones in its path. There is a story about a traveler who was caught in a sudden snowstorm in the high mountains. He was shivering and terrified, certain that his end was near. In his desperation, he stumbled upon a small cave where a hermit was sitting in deep meditation. The hermit didn't have a fire, yet he seemed warm and perfectly at ease. The traveler asked for the secret of the hermit's warmth. The hermit looked at him with eyes that seemed to hold the depth of the night sky and said that he was not fighting the cold, but becoming one with it. He explained that when we resist what is happening, we create a friction that burns through our energy. But when we accept the cold as part of the present moment, our internal heat naturally balances itself. This acceptance is not a form of giving up, but a form of profound alignment. We spend so much of our lives arguing with reality, wishing people were different, wishing the weather were better, or wishing our bodies didn't age. This mental argument is the source of our greatest exhaustion. Imagine a man trying to stop the tide with a broom. He can work until he collapses from fatigue, but the ocean will continue its rhythm regardless of his efforts. If he instead learns to swim with the tide or build his house above the high water mark, he finds a way to live in harmony with a force far greater than himself. Our wisdom grows when we stop trying to control the uncontrollable and start focusing on our own responses. In the old days, there was a king who was haunted by a recurring dream of a golden bird that sang a song of such beauty that all who heard it were healed of their sorrows. He offered half his kingdom to anyone who could find the bird. Many brave warriors and clever scholars set out, returning with empty hands and tall tales. Finally, a simple shepherd boy arrived at the palace. He didn't have a map or a sword, but he had a small wooden flute. He told the king that the bird could not be captured because it was not a physical creature. It was the sound of a heart that had found its own rhythm. He played a few notes on his flute, and for a moment, the king felt a peace so deep that he forgot he was a king. The golden bird of contentment is not something we can trap or possess. It is a quality that arises when we stop chasing the next big thing and start appreciating the small, shimmering details of the life we already have. We often think that happiness is a destination we will reach once we have enough money, the right partner, or the perfect job. But the teachings remind us that happiness is the way we travel, not the place where we arrive. It is in the way we sip our tea, the way we listen to the wind, and the way we offer a hand to someone who has stumbled. These are not preliminary steps to a better life, they are the substance of the life itself. Consider the weaver who spends months creating a complex pattern on a loom. If she is only focused on the finished cloth, the hours of weaving become a burden, a means to an end. But if she finds joy in the movement of the shuttle, the texture of the silk, and the way the colors blend in the moment of their intersection, then every second is a fulfillment. Our lives are also being woven, one breath at a time. We don't need to wait for the whole picture to be complete to feel a sense of purpose. The purpose is in the weaving. Even a single thread, if placed with love and awareness, contributes to the beauty of the whole. There is a profound lesson in the way a mountain handles a storm. It doesn't move, it doesn't complain, and it doesn't try to hide. It simply stands there, allowing the wind to howl and the rain to lash against its sides. When the storm passes, the mountain is still there, perhaps a bit more weathered, but fundamentally unchanged. We can develop a mountain mind that remains steady amidst the changing weather of our emotions. We might feel a gale of anger or a downpour of sadness, but we don't have to be swept away by them. We can observe the weather without becoming the weather. This stability is not a lack of feeling, but a vastness of heart that can hold all feelings without being overwhelmed. I remember a story about a man who was very proud of his intellect. He spent his life collecting facts and arguing with anyone who would listen. He visited a sage and demanded to know the meaning of life in a single sentence. The sage looked at him and said, "The bird flies, the fish swims." The man was furious, thinking the sage was making fun of him. He demanded a more intellectual answer. The sage smiled and said that the problem was that the man was looking for a meaning that was separate from the being. The bird doesn't ask why it flies, it simply flies. The meaning is in the action. When we stop asking why and start fully being, the answers we were looking for often reveal themselves without words. True wisdom is often very simple, almost transparent. It is like the air we breathe, essential, yet easily overlooked. We tend to value things that are difficult, complex, and expensive, but the most precious things in life are free and accessible to everyone. The ability to be kind, the capacity for wonder, the gift of presence, these are the real treasures. There was a wealthy merchant who felt his life was empty despite his vast fortune. He went to a monk and asked how to find true wealth. The monk told him to go to the village square and find the person who looked the most content. The merchant found an old man sitting in the sun, watching the children play. He asked the old man what he owned. The old man replied, "I own this moment, and that is more than enough." This sense of enoughness is the ultimate antidote to the greed that fuels so much of our suffering. When we feel we are not enough, we try to fill the hole with possessions, status, or praise. But the hole is bottomless, and no amount of external stuff can ever fill it. The only way to find peace is to realize that the hole itself is an illusion. We are already whole, already complete, already enough. The spiritual path is not about adding anything to ourselves, but about subtracting the false beliefs that keep us from seeing our own inherent worth. It is like a sculptor who removes the excess stone to reveal the masterpiece that was always inside the block. There is a beautiful practice of not knowing. We often feel we have to have an opinion on everything, to judge everything as good or bad, right or wrong. But this constant judging is very tiring for the mind. If we can allow ourselves to say, "I don't know," we create a space of humility and openness. We stop trying to fit the vast, mysterious universe into the small boxes of our understanding. There was a young student who asked his teacher what would happen after death. The teacher said, "I don't know." The student was shocked and said, "But you are a great master." The teacher replied, "Yes, but I am not a dead master yet." This honesty is a sign of true spiritual maturity. It allows us to live with the mystery rather than trying to solve it. The sound of a bell in the distance often brings a moment of spontaneous stillness. In that moment, the I that is usually so busy with its plans and worries briefly disappears. There is just the sound, and the listening, and the silence that follows. We can find these bell moments throughout our day if we are attentive. It might be the sound of the rain, the sight of a leaf falling, or the feeling of our own heartbeat. These are invitations to wake up from the dream of our distracted thoughts and return to the vibrant reality of the present. Life is calling us back to itself in every second. Are we listening? I once knew a woman who had lost everything in a great fire. She had no home, no possessions, and no money. Yet, when I spoke to her, she didn't seem bitter or despairing. She told me that for the first time in her life, she felt truly free. She said that before the fire, she was so worried about protecting her things that she didn't have time to live. Now, she realized that the only things that couldn't burn were her kindness, her memories, and her capacity to love. Her tragedy had stripped away the layers of having to reveal the bedrock of being. This is a powerful reminder that our security doesn't come from what we have, but from who we are. Kindness is like a ripple on a pond. We never know how far it will travel or whose shore it will reach. A small act of generosity, a word of encouragement, or a moment of genuine listening can change the course of someone's day, or even their life. There was a man who was feeling very low and was walking across a bridge, contemplating ending his life. A stranger walked by and gave him a warm, sincere smile. That simple act of human connection was enough to make the man stop and reconsider. He realized that if the world still had room for such a smile, it still had room for him. We are all potential lifesavers, simply by being present and kind to the people we encounter. The path of the Buddha is often compared to a journey through a forest. At first, the trail is overgrown and difficult to follow. We stumble over roots and get caught in brambles. But as we keep walking, the path becomes clearer and the forest begins to open up. We start to see the beauty of the trees and hear the songs of the birds. We realize that the forest was never our enemy, it was just that we didn't know how to move through it. The brambles are our own mental habits, our anger, our fear, and our cravings. As we practice awareness, these habits lose their power to snag us. We learn to walk with grace and ease, even when the terrain is rough. There was a famous musician who was asked how he could play such complex pieces with such apparent effortlessness. He replied that he had spent years practicing until the music was inside his fingers, and then he just got out of the way. This, getting out of the way, is the secret to all great endeavors. It is the art of non-doing within the doing. When we are fully present, the action happens through us, rather than being forced by us. Our lives become a dance rather than a struggle. We move with the music of the universe, and the results are always more beautiful than anything we could have planned with our limited minds. Think about the way a child plays. They are completely absorbed in what they are doing, whether it is building a sandcastle or chasing a butterfly. They aren't worrying about the past or the future. They are simply there. As we grow older, we often lose this capacity for total immersion. We become split between what we are doing and what we are thinking about. But we can reclaim that childhood sense of presence. We can learn to play again, even in our work and our responsibilities. We can bring a sense of lightheartedness and curiosity to everything we do. This doesn't make us less responsible, it makes us more alive. The world is a magnificent teacher if we know how to listen. The trees teach us about patience and rooting. The water teaches us about flow and persistence. The mountains teach us about stillness and perspective. Even the smallest insect has a story to tell about survival and purpose. We are not separate from this great web of life, we are an integral part of it. When we harm the earth, we harm ourselves. When we protect the earth, we protect ourselves. This realization of interdependence is the foundation of a new way of living, one that is based on respect, gratitude, and care for all beings. There was a village that was known for its beautiful pottery. The secret, according to the master potter, was in the empty space inside the jar. He said that a jar is only useful because of the space it holds. If the jar were solid, it couldn't hold any water. Our lives are also like that. We need empty space, moments of silence, solitude, and rest, to be useful and fulfilled. If our lives are solid, with constant activity and noise, there is no room for the spirit to breathe. We need to value the emptiness just as much as the activity. It is in the silence that we hear the whispers of our own soul and the guidance of the universe. As the day turns into night and the world grows quiet, we can let go of the roles we have played and the tasks we have accomplished. We can return to the simple state of being. We can forgive ourselves for our mistakes and celebrate our small victories. We can rest in the knowledge that we are being held by a vast and benevolent force. This rest is not just a physical necessity, it is a spiritual renewal. It is a way of saying, I trust the universe to take care of things while I sleep. When we wake up, we can begin again with a fresh heart and a clear mind, ready for the next step on the path. Everything we need is already here. The path is right under our feet. The truth is in every breath. The love we are searching for is the very heart of our being. We don't have to go anywhere or become anyone else. We only have to wake up to the miracle of being alive, right here and right now. This waking up is not a one-time event, but a continuous process of returning to ourselves with kindness and awareness. It is a journey of 1,000 miles that begins and ends with a single, mindful step. Let us take that step together, with a sense of quiet joy and deep gratitude for the gift of this moment. The silver glow of the moon reflecting on a still pond serves as a perfect mirror for the mind that has finally ceased its restless wandering, showing us that when the waves of desire and aversion subside, the truth reflects itself naturally without any effort on our part. We often spend our energy trying to fix the reflection, adjusting the surface of our lives to look more successful or more spiritual, yet the source of the image remains within the depth of our own character. There was once an elderly weaver who lived in a remote valley, known for creating tapestries that seemed to change color depending on the light of the room. When a young traveler asked for the secret technique, the weaver laughed and said there was no secret in the fingers, only in the eyes. She explained that most people look at the threads they want to see, but she looked at the space where the threads had not yet been placed. This openness to the unwritten potential of our lives is what allows for true creativity and joy. We often walk through our days with a mental script of how every encounter should go, and when reality departs from that script, we feel a surge of frustration. But the most beautiful moments are often the unscripted ones, the unexpected rain that forces us to seek shelter and meet a new friend, or the broken tool that teaches us a new way to work. In the ancient chronicles, there is a story of a young monk who was struggling to master the art of calligraphy. Every time he made a mistake, he would crumble the paper in anger and start over. His teacher watched him for many days and finally walked over, took one of the ruined pages, and drew a simple butterfly around the ink blot. The teacher told the boy that in the eyes of the Dharma, there are no mistakes, only opportunities to create something new. This shift in perspective transforms our failures from heavy weights into light feathers. We can learn to look at our own ink blots, our regrets, our losses, and our clumsy moments, and see how they can be integrated into the larger pattern of our growth. There was a man who worked as a messenger for a great king, and he was known for his incredible speed. One day, he tripped and twisted his ankle while carrying an urgent letter. Forced to limp slowly through the woods, he noticed a rare medicinal herb that had been sought by the court physicians for years. Because he was forced to slow down, he found something far more valuable than the message he was carrying. Our forced slowing down, whether through illness, aging, or life's many delays, is often a hidden blessing that allows us to see the herbs growing along the path. We spend so much of our youth racing toward a finish line that doesn't exist, only to realize later that the race was the destination. There is a profound sense of relief in putting down the baton and simply walking. A famous sage was once asked what he did before he found peace, and he said he used to carry water and chop wood. When asked what he did after finding peace, he replied that he still carried water and chopped wood, but now he did it without the I, who was always complaining about the weight. The work is the same, but the worker has become transparent. This transparency is the essence of a humble heart. It is not about making ourselves small, but about becoming so large that the ego no longer takes up all the space. Imagine a vast mountain range that doesn't need to tell anyone it is high, it simply exists, providing a home for the eagles and the snow. We can live with that same quiet presence, doing our good work without needing the world to applaud. There was a woman who spent her life planting wildflowers along the dusty roads of her province. She never told anyone it was her, and she never went back to see if they grew. She said the joy was in the planting, not in the owning of the blossoms. This aimless goodness is the purest form of practice. The world often measures value by what can be counted, but the most important things in life are those that can only be felt. The warmth of a memory, the sincerity of a promise, the quiet hum of a peaceful home, these have no market price, yet they are the true currency of a well-lived life. We are like travelers who have been given a precious jewel but are so busy looking at the colorful wrapping paper that we forget to open the box. The teachings are an invitation to stop playing with the paper and look at the jewel within. This jewel is our own awareness, the part of us that remains unchanged whether we are young or old, rich or poor. I recall a story of a young boy who was trying to catch the moon in a bucket of water. Every time he reached for it, the water rippled and the moon vanished. His grandfather sat nearby and told him to stop reaching and just look up. When the boy looked up, he saw the moon hanging in the vast, dark sky, steady and bright. We do the same thing with happiness. We try to catch it in the buckets of our achievements and possessions, only to find that it ripples and disappears. But when we look up, when we shift our gaze to the source of our own being, we find that the peace we were looking for was never in the bucket to begin with. Living with this sky-like awareness means we can allow the clouds of our thoughts to pass through without being bothered. A thought of worry arises, stays for a moment, and then dissolves. A thought of joy arises, stays for a moment, and then dissolves. We don't have to push the clouds away, and we don't have to hold on to them. We are the sky, not the weather. This realization is the key to enduring the winters of our lives. When things are cold and dark, we know that the sky is still there, and that the sun will eventually return. This is not a blind hope, but a deep understanding of the cyclic nature of all things. Everything in the universe moves in cycles, the breath, the seasons, the tides, and even the rise and fall of civilizations. When we align ourselves with these cycles, we find a natural rhythm that supports us. There was a fisherman who was once caught in a whirlpool. Instead of swimming against the current, which would have exhausted him, he dove deep to the bottom where the water was still. By moving with the force instead of fighting it, he found his way out. Most of our mental suffering is like swimming against a whirlpool. We try to fight our feelings or resist our circumstances, only to get pulled in deeper. The way out is often the way in, diving into the heart of the experience with full awareness and a kind heart. There is a beautiful term in the ancient texts that refers to the cool heart. It is the state of a person who is no longer burned by the fires of anger, greed, or delusion. This person can be in the middle of a heated argument and still remain cool, like a lotus flower that stays dry even though it lives in the water. This coolness is not coldness, it is a profound warmth that is balanced by wisdom. It is the ability to care deeply without becoming attached to the outcome. We can love our friends and family with our whole hearts, while also knowing that they are travelers on their own paths, subject to their own karma and the laws of change. Consider the nature of a bridge once more. A bridge is useful because it allows people to cross, but it doesn't try to go with them. It stays where it is, firm and supportive. We can be like that for others, offering our support and our love without trying to control their journey. This is the highest form of respect. There was a teacher who had many students, and some of them went on to do great things, while others struggled and failed. When asked if he felt proud of the successful ones and disappointed in the failures, he said that his job was just to be the light. Some people used the light to find their way home, and others used it to see the thorns on the path. The light remains the light. Our only responsibility is to keep our own light as bright and clear as possible. This means taking care of our physical, emotional, and spiritual well-being. It is not selfish to find time for silence and reflection, it is a service to the world. A person who is at peace is a gift to everyone they meet. Their presence acts like a tuning fork, helping others to find their own harmony. I remember a woman who lived in a very crowded and noisy part of a city. Despite the chaos outside, her small apartment was always a sanctuary of quiet and beauty. She didn't have much, but she arranged what she had with such care and love that anyone who entered immediately felt their shoulders drop and their breath slow down. She was a practitioner of peace in the middle of the storm. We can all create these small sanctuaries within our own lives, even if it is just a small corner of a room or a few minutes of quiet before the day begins. These are the places where we recharge our hearts and remember who we truly are. The world will always be noisy and demanding, but we don't have to let the noise inside. We can be like a house with many windows. The wind can blow outside, but the lamp inside stays steady. This steadiness is the result of many small choices made over many years. It is the practice of returning, again and again, to the present moment. There was a traveler who was once lost in a desert and was dying of thirst. He found a small oasis, but the water was hidden deep within a rocky crevice. He didn't have a cup, so he had to lie down on the hard ground and stretch his arm as far as it would go. He finally touched the cool water with his fingertips and brought it to his lips, one drop at a time. He said that he had never tasted anything so sweet. Sometimes, the difficulty of reaching the water of truth is what makes it so precious. We appreciate the moments of clarity and peace because we know how hard they can be to find in the middle of our busy lives. Life is a precious opportunity to learn the lesson of love. Not the romantic love that we see in movies, but the deep, abiding love that sees the suffering of others and wants to help. This love is the most powerful force in the universe. It can melt the hardest hearts and bridge the widest gaps. It begins with the simple practice of wishing others well. May you be happy, may you be peaceful, may you be free from suffering. When we say these words with sincerity, our own hearts begin to soften. We realize that we are all in this together, and that the happiness of one is the happiness of all. The stars continue to watch over us with their silent, ancient wisdom. They have seen it all before, and they will see it all again. In the grand tapestry of time, our lives are just a single stitch, yet without that stitch, the pattern would be incomplete. Let us make our stitch with care and beauty. Let us live with a sense of high purpose and deep humility. Let us be kind to ourselves and to each other, knowing that the path is long and the way is sometimes dark. But the light is always there, within us and around us, waiting for us to notice it. The sound of the temple bell, the smell of the morning air, the touch of a loved one's hand, these are the real treasures. Let us not miss them while we are busy chasing ghosts. Let us be here, now, fully awake and fully alive. This is the only way to truly honor the gift of our existence. The river keeps flowing, and we are the water. Let us move with grace and trust, knowing that we are always exactly where we need to be. The soft glow of a dying ember in a hearth carries a beauty just as profound as the roaring flame that preceded it, reminding us that every stage of a journey has its own unique light and its own specific wisdom to offer the soul. We often fear the fading of things, the quietening of the world, or the closing of a chapter, yet it is in these gentle abobs that we finally hear the subtle music of the universe that was drowned out by the noise of our striving. There was an old sailor who had spent his life navigating the most treacherous oceans, facing storms that threatened to swallow his ship whole. When he finally retired to a small cottage by the shore, people asked if he missed the excitement of the high seas. He looked out at the horizon where the sky met the water in a seamless line and said that he had spent 40 years fighting the ocean, only to realize in the silence of his porch that he was actually made of the same salt and spray. This realization of being part of the whole is the ultimate resting place for a tired heart. We spend so much energy trying to stand out, to be different, to be better, but the greatest peace comes from simply belonging to the natural order of things. There is a story of a great king who wanted to build a monument that would last forever. He hired the finest architects and used the hardest stone, but as the years passed, the wind and the rain slowly softened the edges of his towers. A wandering sage passed by and told the king that if he wanted to build something eternal, he should plant a forest or teach a child to be kind. The stone would eventually turn to dust, but the life of a forest and the ripple of a kind act would continue in 1,000 different forms long after the king was forgotten. The monuments we leave behind are not made of marble, but of the moments where we chose patience over anger and understanding over judgment. These are the invisible threads that hold the world together. I remember hearing about a village where the people had a tradition of silent weaving. Once a year, they would gather in the square and work on a communal tapestry without speaking a single word. They had to watch each other's hands, anticipate each other's movements, and adjust their own rhythm to match the person sitting next to them. By the end of the day, they had created a masterpiece that no single person could have envisioned. They realized that their silence was not an absence of communication, but a deeper form of connection that transcended the limitations of language. We can practice this silent weaving in our own lives by being more attentive to the unspoken needs of those around us. Sometimes the most powerful thing we can do for someone is to simply sit with them, offering our presence as a steady anchor in their storm. This is the heart of the Dharma in action. It doesn't require a pulpit or a robe, it only requires a heart that is willing to be still. There was a young man who was very clever with words and loved to win arguments about philosophy. He visited an old grandmother who was known for her simple wisdom. He spoke for an hour about the nature of reality, using many complex terms. When he finished, the grandmother simply handed him a freshly baked loaf of bread and said that the warmth of the oven and the scent of the grain were all the reality she needed to know. This return to the direct, sensory experience of life is a powerful way to ground ourselves when the world feels overwhelming. We get lost in the maps of our thoughts and forget to look at the land that is right beneath our feet. The earth doesn't ask us for our credentials, it simply supports our weight. The sun doesn't ask if we are worthy, it simply offers its warmth. When we align ourselves with this unconditional giving of nature, we find a source of generosity within ourselves that is not dependent on being thanked or recognized. We give because it is our nature to give, just as it is the nature of a flower to offer its fragrance to the wind. There is a profound freedom in being nobody special. When we let go of the need to protect an image or maintain a reputation, we can move through the world with a light step. We can be like the wind that passes through the trees without leaving a footprint. This doesn't mean we don't care about our lives, it means we care more about the quality of our presence than the quantity of our achievements. There was a famous painter who, in his old age, began to sign his works with the name, "A Student of the Brush." He realized that the more he knew, the more he saw how much there was still to learn. This humility kept his art fresh and his spirit young. The path of awakening is a circle, not a straight line. We often end up back where we started, but we see the beginning with entirely new eyes. The home we were searching for was the place we never truly left. There is a beautiful story of a man who traveled the world looking for a legendary treasure, only to return home as an old man and find it buried under the hearth of his own kitchen. The treasure is our own capacity for awareness, the gold of our fundamental nature that was there all along. We just had to go on the journey to become the kind of person who could recognize it. As we walk through the final hours of our day, or the final years of our lives, we can do so with a sense of completion. Not because we have done everything, but because we have been fully present for what we did. There is a certain grace in the way the sun slips below the horizon, leaving a trail of color that lingers in the sky. We can leave a similar afterglow of kindness and peace in the hearts of those we have touched. We don't have to be perfect, we just have to be sincere. Our mistakes are the compost that nourishes our wisdom, and our joys are the flowers that decorate the path. I often think about the image of a river finally reaching the sea. The river has traveled through mountains, forests, and cities. It has been clear and muddy, fast and slow. But when it touches the ocean, it doesn't disappear, it simply expands. The boundaries of the riverbanks are gone, and it becomes part of the vast, salty deep. Our individual lives are like that river, and our practice is the journey toward that vastness. We don't have to fear the ending, for the ending is just a return to the source. The water is the same, whether it is in a small stream or the wide ocean. The stars above us are now appearing one by one, a silent audience to the unfolding drama of life on Earth. They remind us of the incredible vastness of space and time, and the preciousness of our brief moment under the sun. Let us use this moment well. Let us be kind to our bodies, which are the vehicles for our journey. Let us be kind to our minds, which are the windows through which we see the world. And let us be kind to our hearts, which are the compasses that guide us home. Everything is interconnected, everything is changing, and everything is exactly as it should be in the eyes of the truth. There is a quiet joy that comes from knowing that we are part of something that never ends. The forms change, the names are forgotten, but the life continues. Like the breath that moves through us and then through another, we are part of a continuous flow of existence. When we see this, the fear of loss begins to fade. We can hold things lightly, enjoying them while they are here and letting them go when it is time. This lightness of touch is the secret to a happy life. We don't have to grasp or cling, we can simply open our hands and let the world move through them. The sound of the wind in the leaves is the Dharma. The taste of the water is the Dharma. The feeling of the ground beneath our feet is the Dharma. It is not something separate from our lives, it is our lives. Every moment is an invitation to wake up, to be kind, and to be free. We don't need to wait for a better time or a different place. Right here, in the middle of our ordinary, messy, beautiful lives, is where the sacred is found. Let us cherish this life, let us honor each other, and let us walk together with hearts full of wonder and eyes wide open to the miracle of being alive. The lamp of our awareness is always burning, even when the shadows seem long. We can always return to that light, finding refuge in the silence and the peace that lives at the center of our being. This is the promise of the path, and it is a promise that is fulfilled in every mindful breath. May you find the peace you are looking for, and may you realize that you have already found it. The journey is the home, and the home is right here, in the very heart of this moment.